Hello, everyone. Tonight we are sitting inside a low, smoke-darkened tent stitched from mammoth hide tucked tightly into the side of a frozen ridge. The air smells of old fire reindeer tallow and whatever someone forgot to take out of last week's stew. There's a faint glow where the light pokes through a hole above the hearth, your only skylight in a world of permanent frost. You're maybe 7 winters old, give or take. Age doesn't really get counted out here, just remembered by the seasons that nearly took you. And yes, you're about to do something stupid. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you really like what I do here. Let me know your location and your local time in the comments. I promise to read them while wrapped in 6 layers of reindeer fur. Now, turn off the lights, maybe turn on the fan for some soothing noise, and let's get started tonight. Your fingertip hovers too close to the edge of the fire. The embers draw you in like hypnotic beetles glowing red under ash. You touch it. There's a yelp not quite loud enough to wake the baby, but sharp enough to startle a nearby dog. You yank your hand back, and the old woman next to you doesn't even look up. She just mutters something about the fire teaching faster than she can. And that, weirdly, is your punishment. No slap, no shouting. Just a moment where pain taught you a rule, and your grandmother didn't interrupt the lesson. Her silence is her verdict. You're already nursing the burned fingers plunged into a slush bowl half full of elk marrow. And in Ice Age terms, this is about as gentle as it gets. In a world where starvation sits by the door and wolves sing lullabies in the distance, discipline isn't about domination, it's about shaping survival. Children aren't scolded so much as nudged back into sync with the rhythm of the clan. There are no prisons, no timeouts, and definitely no candy bribes. There is only social gravity, and occasionally very cold feet. You shuffle back into the circle and now you're aware. Every motion matters. The way you pass the carved spoon. The careful angle of your knees so they don't knock into the elder's bowl. No one needs to say a word you've learned. Outside, the wind howls with enough force to convince even the bravest child not to sulk too far from camp. But that doesn't stop you from glancing at the flap, wondering what's beyond it. Curiosity in an Ice Age child is dangerous. It's the same instinct that led someone last winter to stick their nose into a snow fox den and come out with 3 fewer fingers. You don't want to end up like them. Historically, there's evidence that early human children weren't treated as disposable or fragile. Carvings and artifacts from the Upper Paleolithic period, roughly 40,000 years ago, suggest that children were participants in rituals, games, and even artistic traditions. But they were also expected to listen, to observe, to mimic. Childhood back then wasn't a protected bubble. It was a training ground with mammoth bones for monkey bars. You return your attention to the fire. Nearby, a boy barely older than you is grinding ochre into powder, eyes narrowed in concentration. He messes up the rhythm. Once lets the pestle clack too loudly and earns a quick glance from the adult beside him. That's it. A glance. But it lands with the weight of 1,000 lectures. He winces, adjusts, and resumes. This is how it works. Even play has consequences. If you waste a tool, you remake it. If you hurt someone, you fix what's broken, or you sit outside the story circle until someone decides you've learned enough to rejoin. There's no scoreboard, no sticker chart, but the tribe remembers. Every small transgression is a knot in your personal thread. The question is whether that thread still weaves smoothly into the bigger cloth. Remember when humans evolved? Well, they didn't evolve patience because someone gave them a gold star. They evolved it because a quiet look from an elder could mean the difference between staying warm or being voted off the snowbank. That's not to say it was all grim and solemn. You do giggle, a lot actually. And your laughter is like a secret torch passed between you and the other children. But if you get too loud during a sacred tale, someone might toss a pine cone at you, not angrily, just enough to say you're interrupting the mammoth saga, kid. These small gestures carry the full architecture of discipline. Historians still debate whether these rituals qualify as punishments in the modern sense, or if they were more like guided corrections inside a tight-knit emotional matrix. Either way, you're not being punished with pain. You're being sculpted with rhythm, with tone, with memory. Later that night, when the adults start to hum that low, bone-deep song, drums, barely audible voices vibrating like the cold itself, you sit very still. You don't touch the fire again. You hold your bowl carefully. You are for this brief moment a model Ice Age child. But that doesn't mean you're safe from the next lesson. Tomorrow's mistake is already waiting. The snow had stopped some time before dawn, but the cold hadn't relented. You wake up under a tangled web of furs, your nose also already frozen before your eyes even open. Somewhere outside, a wolf coughs into the dark. You can tell by the light that it's not quite morning, not that mornings here feel much different from the middle of the night. Time doesn't so much pass as drift like the smoke curling from the hearth. You don't want to get up. You've been dreaming of marrow soup and a cave that smells like berries. But you hesitate too long. From the far end of the tent, a call slices the quiet. Out, now. Bring snow for the pots. You mumble something incoherent. That's your first mistake. The second is thinking you can roll over and pretend you didn't hear. Before you can bury your head back under the hide, something icy slaps your wrist. You yelp. It's a handful of packed snow expertly thrown. The delivery boy, your older cousin, smirking like he's just won a prize for speed and precision. And technically he has. You'd been warned last night everyone gathers snow for melting before the light changes. No snow, no drink, no warm broth. Your delay affects everyone. So that was your punishment, a friendly snowball to the wrist. Not exactly medieval torture, but highly motivational. You scramble up, tug on your half-frozen boots, and dash into the morning like a little mammoth on fire. There are no chore charts here, no timers, just rhythm. If you miss your beat, someone else has to pick it up, and nobody likes extra work. So the system regulates itself, enforced by sideways glances, well-timed snowballs, and the occasional symbolic humiliation. And symbolic is the key word here. Ice Age children aren't punished with injury. They're punished with inconvenience, embarrassment, or exclusion. The elders understand that survival depends on group cohesion, not fear. You can't traumatize the future hunters well, not too much, or they'll grow up with twitchy spears and trust issues. You gather snow in a carved basin, hands already numb. One of the younger girls beside you starts to sob quietly. She's dropped her bowl and the packed snow scattered like flour. She knows there won't be a second bowl, not today. You don't laugh, not even a little. That would be a third mistake. Instead, you lean over and help her repack snow with your elbow. She nods, without speaking. It's a gesture you've seen before among adults who've fumbled their dignity and lived to tell the tale. You return to the tent in silence, breath fogging around your face. Your reward: a spot closer to the fire and a shallow bowl of warmed snowmelt. Not exactly luxury, but it beats being remembered as the kid who whined his way through morning chores. An odd fact about Ice Age life: snow was both punishment and blessing. It could chill your bones, ruin your traps, smother your fire. But it could also cool fever, hide your scent from predators, and wash blood from your hands. Children quickly learned to respect it, especially when it landed inside their boots as a playful warning. Inside the tent, the elders begin carving bone buttons, their fingers callous, their eyes sharp. One of them, a man missing part of his nose you've never asked why, raises his brow at you. Late, he asks. Just the word. No anger, no sarcasm, just a single syllable filled with weight. You nod. Won't be again. Good, he says, already turning back to his carving. Next time we use 2 snowballs. This elicits a laugh from someone behind you, probably your cousin again. But it's a soft laugh, not cruel. The tribe believes in laughter more than scolding. You get teased, not terrorized. Ridiculed, not rejected. It's a delicate dance. Humiliation light enough to remember, never heavy enough to crush. Historians still debate whether this kind of punishment play created stronger social bonds or just made kids sneakier. But the archaeological clues, decorated tools, children's footprints near complex hearths suggest these little humans weren't shamed into silence. They were integrated even when they messed up. A few hours later, when the chores are done and the midday quiet settles over camp like a heavy hide, you lie belly down near the fire and trace pictures into the ash with a stick. No one stops you. Boredom isn't punished, but neglecting your duties to indulge it. That's how you earn another snowball. You remember last moon's snowfall when your friend Orek tried to hide instead of scraping skins? He'd wriggled under the sled and thought he was clever. 5 minutes later, every single child in the camp had accidentally dropped snow down his neck. He cried. Then he laughed. Then he cried again. But he scraped the hides all the way through that week with no further drama. That's how these things go. You learn, you adjust, you survive. And in some strange way, you thrive. The cold outside might be merciless, but inside, the camp, even punishments come wrapped in the warmth of communal memory. And if a handful of snow is the worst thing that happens to you before dinner, well, you're doing pretty well for a small barefoot mammal on a planet still half covered in ice. The meat is sizzling, or at least crackling over an open flame. It's a good evening. The kind where the smoke doesn't sting the eyes. The babies have stopped crying, and there's enough marrow to go around without anyone pretending they're not hungry, which is exactly why you ruin it. You're quick faster than most. When the tray of boiled meat is passed around, you lunge. A soft grunt from the elder beside you should have been your warning, but you're already elbow deep in something that smells divine and sizzles at the edges. You chew once, maybe twice, before the silence settles. Every eye is on you, and in that moment you remember. You know better. The youngest never eats first, ever. You freeze meat still in your mouth, heat blooming on your cheeks. It's not the kind of mistake that gets you exiled, but it will stick. The elder, a woman with braids so long they've been stepped on by toddlers and dogs alike, turns to you with a look somewhere between boredom and disappointment. Without speaking, she holds out her hand. And so you give her your piece, chewed, warm, ash-stained. Your heart thuds in your chest like you've just dropped a torch into a snowbank. She takes it, gives you the same nod you've seen her give to dogs when they bring back a bone instead of a kill, and tosses the half-eaten meat into the fire. Then she hands you a dry root. That's your dinner. It's a punishment both practical and poetic. You showed impatience, and you're left chewing on something that tastes like a dusty foot. But again, no yelling, no fury. Just correction wrapped in cultural weight. You've broken a sacred rhythm, and now you're out of sync. In many Ice Age cultures, food was ritual. The order of eating reflected the order of survival. Those who guided the group kept them alive, healed the sick, or hunted. Dinner went first. You're a walking liability. A snot-nosed liability with fast fingers and a disrespect for protocol. And yet even now the rebuke is soft. One of the other children nudges your elbow, offering half their own portion. You shake your head. No one told you not to take it, but accepting charity after misbehavior. That's another unwritten rule. You chew your root in silence and listen to the adults talk about tomorrow's hunt. Odd fact. In at least one Siberian burial site dating back over 30,000 years, archaeologists found a child interred with ornate beads and tools, not the scraps of a tag-along, but the gear of someone seen as important. Respect, it seems, wasn't age-gated, but it had to be earned. Back in the fire circle, the mood lightens. A hunter with a crooked nose is retelling the story of how he once mistook a muskox for a cave spirit and ran screaming into a snowbank. The laughter roars. Even the elder with the braids cracks a smile. You're still chewing root. Humiliation in this case lasts exactly as long as your chewing does. Historians still debate whether these gentle punishments were structured or simply improvised by parents and elders. Was there a coda list? A subtle protocol passed down like flint secrets and hunting calls? No one really knows. But what is clear from living traditions among Arctic and subarctic peoples is that emotional correction was often preferred over physical harm. Shame without violence, laughter without cruelty. And food, well, food could be a lesson in itself. Later that night, you're invited to help rub fat into the hides. It's work usually reserved for the more disciplined. Someone's giving you a second chance. You don't waste it. You rub the fat in with rhythmic motions just like you were shown. The elder watches. Then, without a word, she passes you a scrap of meat she'd saved, still warm, still dripping. You hesitate. She nods. You take it. But this time you wait until everyone else has started eating. And when you do, it tastes better than anything you've ever stolen. Maybe it's the heat. Maybe it's the salt. Maybe it's the fact that it wasn't snatched, but earned. From across the circle, someone makes a joke about how fast your hands are. Another child mimics your earlier lunge, turning it into a small performance complete with exaggerated chewing. Laughter spills out again. You're not excluded. You're folded back into the story. And that's how things work here. You're allowed to make mistakes. You're expected to. But you're also expected to fix them, or at least endure the root dinners that follow. Tomorrow, maybe you'll be the one scolding someone younger for leaping at food too soon. Maybe you'll do it with a look, or a dry root, or a laugh. That's the whole point. The skins are stretched tight across the frame, catching the low light of dusk. Smoke coils upward into the graying sky. Somewhere beyond the fires, the wind toys with the forest, rattling ice-crusted branches like bones. But here in the heart of the camp, it's a different kind of ritual underway, one you've learned to fear only slightly. You were talking too loud. You weren't shouting exactly, but your voice carried through the tent at the wrong moment, right in the middle of a story about the first bear that spoke. One of the elders had stopped mid-word. The drums had stilled. Eyes had turned toward you. And that was that. No one needed to explain. You're not kicked out, not formally. That would be far too dramatic. Instead, you're simply escorted gently, pointedly by your mother's firm hand to the fur pile at the side of the tent. Not the warm central one. No, this one's reserved for drying skins and sulking children. You're not even told to sit. You're just left there, surrounded by discarded pelts and the scent of wet leather and sour herbs. No warmth, no fire, no stories. You can still hear the others. Their voices drift across the space, softened by laughter and rhythm. A new drum beat begins low and steady. You can feel it in your chest like a second heartbeat. But you're not part of it, not tonight. You hug your knees to your chest. It's not the cold that stings, it's the absence. In Ice Age, society's exile didn't have to mean banishment beyond the trees. It could be symbolic, even temporary. The act of turning someone away from the hearth was like removing a cog from a delicate mechanism. Everyone noticed. And you curled in the fur pile feel like the entire world is built around the space you're not occupying. This wasn't your first offense. You'd been warned. The sacred stories aren't just entertainment, they're glue. They bind generations through memory, myth, and shared fear of giant antlers. Interrupting them is like sneezing during a prayer or spilling soup on a mammoth tusk carving. It's not about volume, it's about respect. You lie there listening. The story picks up again, but now you can't quite follow. Your mind drifts. You think of the foxbone charm tucked into your pouch, of the elder with the missing fingers who once let you sharpen his stone blade, of the way everyone had turned so quietly when you'd laugh too loudly during the part where the bear becomes a woman and marries the moon. You weren't mocking. You were just amused. An odd fact. Some Ice Age groups are believed to have used isolation not as punishment but as ritual correction, a symbolic timeout designed to restore balance rather than assign blame. You weren't bad. You were just out of tune, like a drum that rattled instead of thudded. Still, historians argue over whether such gentle corrections were common, or whether we're just romanticizing harsh realities through rare archaeological finds and modern hunter-gatherer parallels. After all, bones don't tell bedtime stories. But etchings in cave walls and repeated hearth placements do hint at complex social choreography where even the youngest had their place. Eventually, the music shifts. A lighter rhythm begins a game song, not a sacred one. Someone is teasing the boy who tried to flirt with the wrong cousin last moon. You hear laughter. It hurts a little being apart from it. But it's also a lesson carved without words into your spine. Then the footsteps. Soft ones, light and fast. A girl no older than you appears by your side and tosses something into your lap. It's a stone figure, a bear roughly carved with a wide, goofy grin. You know what this means. It's not forgiveness, not exactly. It's an invitation to laugh at yourself. You don't move. She sticks out her tongue and vanishes back into the tent. A few heartbeats later, you're called. A low voice from near the hearth. No scolding, no name. Just the subtle absence of sound where your name should be. You rise, brush the dust and fur from your legs, and shuffle back into the circle. The spot you had is gone, but a new one's opened slightly farther from the fire, slightly closer to the dogs. It's not punishment, it's adjustment. You sit, you listen, you don't speak. This time when the story turns to the part where the bear bride gifts her children with glowing teeth, you don't laugh. You feel the rhythm. You let it carry you. You become part of it again. And no one has to say a word. That's how things are corrected here, not with fear, but with absence. Not with fury, but with the quiet pressure of being missed. Being wanted, but not until you're ready to want it too. Later that night, as the fire dims and someone lays a warm skin across your shoulders, you find the carved bear still in your hand. Its grin now feels less foolish, more familiar. A reminder that exile, like everything in this world, is temporary. As long as you're willing to return with quiet feet and open ears. The carving broke. Not entirely just a clean snap right across the middle, but it's enough to bring the room to a hush. You hold both halves in your hands like they're freshly slain birds, helpless wings wide. The wood is light, the edges raw. It had been your siblings an animal figure shaped with care over 3 days and a lot of grunting. You'd been warned not to touch it. Repeatedly. So now here you are, 2 broken pieces, 1 cold silence. Your sibling stares at you, not angry exactly, just blank. Hurt in a quiet, stunned way. There's no screaming. Not here. Ice-age children don't throw tantrums over broken toys because well toys take work. And punishment doesn't come in the form of corner standing or spankings. It comes in the form of assignments. A tall man with bad knees and a fox-skin hat approaches. He kneels beside you, taking the 2 pieces with slow hands. He doesn't lecture. He doesn't sigh. He simply says, make a new one. Your sibling blinks. You blink. That one's ruined, he adds, tossing the broken halves into the fire. Now you make it better. It's not an invitation. It's your sentence. You're handed a blunt flake of stone and a piece of wood that looks about as promising as a stick of bone-dry celery. And off you go out of the circle toward the skin-curing racks where the light is dim and the dogs won't trip over you. You sit cross-legged. You begin. This is your apology now. Historians have puzzled over the presence of miniature carvings among Ice Age peoples. Many assume they were offerings, totems, or children's toys. But some suspect they may have also served as tools for discipline, a way to teach fine motor skills and accountability in one tidy little task. You break something. You craft something. Not necessarily the same, but something worthy, something sincere. You try, you really do. The first cut slips and grazes your palm. Nothing dramatic. Just enough to sting and remind you that stone tools have opinions. The second cut splinters a corner. You mutter something you're not supposed to say. The wind ignores you. Odd fact. The oldest known wooden sculpture, the Shigir idol, is over 11,000 years old and stands 9 feet tall, but even the smallest carvings from early human history carry deep symbolism. And today yours carries guilt. You can feel it in the grain. By midday your fingers ache. Your carving doesn't look like anything really. Maybe a wolf or a rabbit that's had a bad year. But it is something. It has shape weight, and if you squint purpose, you bring it back into the circle. You don't present it like a trophy. You place it quietly beside your sibling's seat. They don't look at you, not right away, but their hand rests on it later that evening. Not to play with it, just to acknowledge it. That's enough. You're not exonerated, but you're trying. You sit by the fire again. The man with the fox hat gives you a nod. It's not proud, it's not warm, but it means you've done the work. And in a world where the cold will kill you faster than guilt ever will, that's all you really need. There are other children in the camp who've gone through similar rites. The girl who left the fish hooks too close to the fire and melted them was told to spend a day shaping replacements. The boy who broke a pot had to help the potter gather new clay waist-deep in freezing mud, shivering but learning. The lesson is always the same: if your actions make more work for others, you owe work in return. Historians still debate whether this style of correction arose from necessity or philosophy. Was it purely pragmatic? Or was there an early understanding that the best kind of discipline is creation rather than destruction? Hard to say. But when you're carving an apology out of driftwood with a flake of flint and a tight throat, it's hard to argue with the logic. Later that night, your sibling nudges you. They hold up the new carving. They turn it in their hands. It's ugly, they say, but there's a smile twitching at the corner of their mouth. You shrug. So's your face. The elder clears his throat from across the fire, but you both know he's not really upset. Tomorrow the carving might be tossed into the fire, or it might be kept. Either way, the punishment worked not because it was harsh, but because it made you feel. Not shame, not fear, just responsibility. And maybe if you're lucky, a little pride. The flames flicker on the wooden figure's uneven face. It might not be beautiful, but it's yours. And it says what you couldn't. I broke something. I tried to fix it. And in this world, that's enough. You've made a mistake. Again. This time, it wasn't a carving or a meal or an outburst during the bare moon story. No, this time it happened on the trail, during a hunt. And that makes it worse. It started with a crunch. Not the good kind like marrow bones or ice crust underfoot, but the kind that echoes through the woods and makes all the birds shut up. You stepped on a branch, a big one, loudly, right as the hunters had spotted fresh tracks. The lead hunter didn't even turn around. He just sighed. A deep one. The kind you feel in your own lungs. You were told to stop. Then a quiet voice, calm flat, said, "Walk with me." And just like that, you were reassigned. From the hunting party to him. The silent uncle. He's not your real uncle, but everyone calls him that. He's the one who speaks only when needed, sharpens his own spears, and once stared down a wolverine without blinking. He also smells like dry moss and old leather, and doesn't laugh at jokes, any jokes. You follow him now, not toward the mammoth trails, away. He walks slowly, deliberately, and never once looks back to see if you're keeping up. You are, barely. Your legs are shorter, your boots not quite thick enough for this path, and your pride still smarting from the audible crunch heard round the forest. This is your punishment, a walk. No words, no fire, no witnesses, and yet somehow it's worse than the snowball or the root or even the exile to the fur pile. Because this isn't exclusion, this is attention. Focused, intentional, terrifying attention from a man who says more with silence than others do with shouting. He pauses at a bend in the trail, points at a patch of disturbed snow. "Rabbit," he says, then nothing. You squint. You can't even see the tracks at first. But then, there, tiny indentations, almost invisible. "Smell it," he adds. You do. Nothing. He raises one brow. You inhale deeper. Still nothing. He just starts walking again. You hurry to catch up. Odd fact. Some modern-day Arctic cultures use nonverbal teaching more than verbal, especially with children. The idea is simple: watch, copy, feel. Learn without being told. It's frustrating at first, but eventually it works. So now you walk. Hours pass. He doesn't scold, doesn't test you, doesn't explain, but he makes sure you see things: a broken twig, a stone rubbed smooth by old hands, a half-eaten root that a bear must have ignored. You begin to observe. He stops again, this time at a small stream mostly frozen over. He sits. So you sit. He eats dried meat. You wait. He tosses you a piece. You catch it without thinking. A flicker of approval might have passed over his face, but it's gone too fast to confirm. Historians still debate whether such quiet, mentor-based corrections were punishment or just another layer of Ice Age pedagogy. But in this moment, you're starting to understand it's not about the mistake. It's about seeing what you missed and feeling the weight of attention while you do. He finally speaks again. Too fast, he says. You walk like you're angry at the ground. You chew your meat slowly. I didn't mean to. He shrugs. Meaning is for stories, not tracks. You nod. You don't argue. You don't even fully understand. But you feel the truth of it settle like frost on your eyebrows. You walk again. By the time you return to camp, the sky is dimming. Not quite dark. Just that purplish blue that means the sun's made other plans. The hunters are back. No kill. They nod at the silent uncle. He nods back. No one asks you anything. But later when you sit near the fire again, you notice your spot is closer than it used to be. Not by much, but enough to mean something. You see things now you didn't see before. The way one of the women checks her gut string for phrase. The look a boy gives his older brother before handing over a sharpened tool. These aren't mistakes or rituals. They're habits, signs, paths. And your walk with the silent uncle was part of that pattern. A correction, yes, but not one meant to wound. Just one meant to open your eyes. You lie down that night with sore legs and a quieter mind. The crunching branch still echoes in your memory, but now it feels like a footnote. The real story was the silence, the walk, the lesson with no words and no praise. You fall asleep imagining the rabbit trail you couldn't smell. Next time you will. You knew you were getting too cocky when you asked for the fatty strip. Not just any fatty strip either. The one from the throat of the salmon, the piece with the richest oil, the part everyone wants but no one dares request unless their catch brought in two others. And you caught nothing. You tripped into a snowdrift chasing shadows and came back wet and smelling of humiliation. So when you asked for the best piece, there was a silence sharp enough to slice bone. Someone handed you a chunk of fish, all right, but not that chunk. The eyes, two of them, still glossy, still staring. You stared back. No words were spoken. None needed to be. It was a clear, ancient sentence passed down through millennia. You want to act like a big shot, then you'll eat like a scavenger. You blinked. You waited for someone to crack a joke. Maybe your cousin, maybe the older girl who laughs at everything, even her own mosquito bites. But no one laughed. They just watched. So you bit in. And look, to be fair, the eyes weren't the worst thing you've tasted. That honor goes to the raw squirrel liver you tried once on a dare. But this was different. The taste wasn't just fish and salt and jelly, it was the flavor of consequence. It sat on your tongue like memory. You chewed. You swallowed. They all nodded. Lesson delivered. In Ice Age communities, food wasn't just fuel, it was language. And like language, it had grammar, rules, violations, and corrections. The best parts were reserved, the worst given symbolically to those who needed humbling. And that didn't mean exclusion, it meant recalibration. A reminder that ego has a taste and it's slippery and gelatinous. Odd fact. In some Arctic and subarctic cultures, food-related shaming rituals still exist in subtle forms. Offering a respected guest the eye of the fish, for example, is a gesture of honor. But to a child, it can mean the opposite, depending entirely on the context. Historians still debate whether children understood these nuances or simply learned through repetition. Did they feel the moral weight of the fish eye, or did they just flinch at the taste? Hard to say. But tonight you definitely feel it. After the meal, you wander off toward the dog circle. You need a moment. Maybe to sulk. Maybe to digest. A young dog follows you, sniffing your hands, disappointed by the lack of leftovers. You get the eyes someone calls from behind. You don't turn around. Bet they stared back. You kick snow at the voice lightly without malice. Laughter bubbles. It's a kind laugh, the kind that brings you back into the fold, not shoves you further out. Punishment complete. The elder who served you. The eyes finds you later crouched by the sled. He squats beside you, says nothing for a while, then hands you a piece of hide to soften. No speech, no explanation, just another task, a new beginning. You work the hide. It's stiff cold. Your hands ache from the salt, but there's something oddly soothing about it, like chewing on humility until it becomes useful again. You don't ask for the fatty strip next time. You wait. You earn. And when someone passes it to you a few days later, quietly, wordlessly, you shake your head. Not out of fear, just because you're not ready. Yet, another child snatches it. You don't mind. You sit back and watch them chew with too much pride, and you wonder what they'll be eating tomorrow. You were trying to impress someone, which, to be fair, is a very old instinct. You'd seen a bird, a ptarmigan, plump and clueless, dart across the snow earlier that morning, and you spent the better part of the day mimicking its call. At first it wasn't bad. Even the dogs tilted their heads at you. Then you did it again, and again, louder, then louder still, then once while someone was sleeping. That was the mistake. By the third time you knew you'd overcommitted. The sound you made wasn't bird-like anymore. It sounded more like a goat sneezing into a bucket, or maybe a rock with indigestion. And it was loud, very loud. The camp fell quiet. A few seconds passed. Then someone near the fire chirped back. Not a real bird call, your bird call. A dead-on impression of your worst attempt. Then someone else did it. Then another. The mimicry spread like wildfire. Laughter followed, not cruel, but irresistible. One of the hunters flapped his arms in an exaggerated ptarmigan waddle, nearly knocking over a pot. You tried not to smile, but your face betrayed you. This was the punishment. Or, depending on how you looked at it, the reward: full-scale public mockery. Light, playful, and totally devastating. It wasn't just the kids either. Adults joined in, each adding their own twist. Someone mimicked the bird call, then pretended to fall into a snowbank. Another drew a stick figure ptarmigan in the ash labeled "You" in crooked charcoal lines. This wasn't exile or silence or even a fisheye. It was something worse and better. They were including you in your humiliation. In Ice Age communities, laughter was a form of discipline, sharpened, shared, and warmly cruel. It kept egos from growing too big. You acted like a fool. You got a show. You became the joke and the audience. Odd fact. Among some Inuit groups, even today, teasing serves as emotional correction. Mocking a child who brags or disrupts teaches boundaries without anger. The child laughs, but the message lands. Historians still debate whether prehistoric people had structured rituals for this kind of social mirroring, or if it was just organic. Either way, the campfire comedy circuit tonight is definitely not random. It has a rhythm, a purpose, it's deliberate. Eventually, the mimicry dies down, but the memory clings. Your red-faced eyes, watery stomach, sore from laughing and cringing at once. You sit quietly, hoping someone will change the subject. They do, eventually drifting into a tale about a hunter who married a seal. These things happen, but you stay quiet, face warm, heart thudding. And then you do something strange. You try the call again. Just once, quieter, more accurate. It's not bad. Someone claps. Another nods. You've learned. Not to be silent, but to listen first, then speak. And maybe make sure your next impression doesn't sound like a dying walrus. Later that night, you lie down in your fur pile, still hearing echoes of chirps and giggles. Someone's drawn the ptarmigan again, this time with stick legs and giant ears. It's resting beside your sleeping spot. You smile, genuinely. That's the beauty of this kind of punishment. It doesn't banish you. It folds you deeper into the group. It says, you're still one of us. But maybe let the birds handle the bird calls next time. And just like that, your lesson becomes legend. A week from now, someone else will be the butt of the joke. And you'll be the one drawing in the ash. Section 9. It starts with a whisper. Cold toe. You freeze. You know what that means. It's not a threat. It's not even said loud enough for the adults to hear. But among the children, it's gospel. You messed up, and now you've earned it. You'd been careless during the firewood gathering. Tossed half-dried sticks onto the pile without checking for moisture. Someone had to relight the fire twice. The smoke smelled wrong. The elder sniffed the air, eyes narrowed. But he didn't say anything. He just grunted and turned back to his scraping work. Which meant your punishment had been quietly transferred to the others. They deliver it with ceremony. At dusk, as everyone prepares for the evening storytelling, you're pulled gently aside not by force, but by tradition. 3 other children lead you to the edge of the camp. No one explains. They don't need to. You remove your right boot. Then your left. They count to 5. And you step into the snow. Barefoot. It's not deep, maybe ankle height, but it's enough to bite. Enough to send little knives of cold singing up through your bones. The others don't laugh. They just watch. The oldest holds a drum. Gently, rhythmically, he taps it once. Twice. That's all. You step back out. Boots on. Punishment complete. No one speaks about it again. It's called the ceremony of the cold toe, and you've seen it performed a few times, always for something small. A missed duty. A selfish choice. A lie about who really ate the last of the honeyed lichen. It's a ritual, not a punishment in the strictest sense. More like a cold handshake from the past. And weirdly, it works. You never forget it. The sting, the hush, the strange dignity of it. Odd fact. Cold-based symbolic punishments are found in various indigenous traditions, often as rites of endurance rather than punishment. Historians argue over whether these were disciplinary or spiritual in function. Some believe they were both body and behavior braided together like twine. You walk back to the fire circle. No one teases you. In fact, someone shifts to give you space. One of the girls silently passes you a warm stone that had been resting in the ashes. You hold it under your cloak like a secret. There's something profoundly equalizing about shared discomfort. You weren't screamed at. You weren't shamed. You just got cold. And in this world, cold means consequence. That's all it has to mean. Later that night, a new child joins the camp, an outsider's cousin maybe. He fumbles his tasks, talks too loud. You see someone whisper cold toe and you stop them. And he's new, you say. They nod. No cold toe tonight. And just like that, the cycle changes. Because that's the thing about these traditions, they aren't rigid. They're passed hand to hand, toe to snow, adjusted along the way. Historians still debate whether Ice Age tribes operated with anything resembling what we'd now call restorative justice. But when you see how one barefoot moment shifts behavior more effectively than 1,000 threats ever could, you start to suspect they were onto something. The next morning, you gather firewood with real care. You test every piece. You check the bark. You double-check the smoke, because you know what the snow feels like between your toes, and you're not in a hurry to feel it again. They don't look at you, not for the whole morning. At first, you think it's a joke. You bump someone's shoulder and they just shift away. You whisper a greeting and it dies in the air like breath on a cold stone. One child walks right past you like you're a breeze. Another reaches for the ladle, skipping your hand like it wasn't even there. You're invisible. And the worst part, you know why? You tattled. It wasn't even malicious. Just a little truth. A boy had taken more than his share of smoked roots and hidden them in his pouch. You saw it. You told. But you told the wrong way, with pride in your voice, like you were announcing a win, like you had power. And now the tribe is reminding you what power really looks like. It looks like silence, like absence, like having to sit through breakfast while no one speaks your name or hands you a bowl. This is the punishment to be erased. There's no grand decree, no elder passing judgment, just a quiet, coordinated forgetting. You are present but not acknowledged, like a spirit who hasn't earned its return. You sit near the fire. No one shifts to make room. You fetch water. No one thanks you. You try to help a toddler find his mittens, but his mother gently redirects him away from you. This goes on for hours, and then the worst happens. You start to believe it. Not that you've vanished physically, of course, but something inside begins to crumble. You start moving slower, speaking quieter. You stop trying to interrupt or joke. Your hands feel heavier. You think of the boy you tattled, on how he's now laughing with the others restored and real, while you flick ash from your sleeve like it means anything. Odd fact. Some anthropologists have described similar techniques among modern hunter-gatherer societies. Social cooling, where a person's behavior is corrected through group detachment rather than confrontation. It's painful, but it works. Historians still debate whether prehistoric tribes used this intentionally or if it emerged naturally like flint sparks and dry moss. But here now in your story, it's deliberate, it's refined, it's cultural muscle memory. By midday, you've had enough. You get up, no one watches. You head for the elder's tent. You gather the discarded bones from the midday stew, arrange them beside the fire, and begin carving small animals into them. You shape a bird, a fox, a bear. You set them on a flat stone and wait. It's not a direct apology. It's not even a gift. It's gesture. And that in this world is the beginning of repair. Later, when the sun slips behind the trees and the wind returns with its old sharp whisper, a girl passes by and gently rearranges your bear carving, not for correction, just participation. You're real again. That evening, someone hands you a piece of flatbread. You didn't ask. You didn't expect it, but it's still warm. Another child leans over. He gave the roots back, she says, referring to the boy you tattled on. We handled it. You nod. That's all. No one says, welcome back, because you were never officially gone. You were just being reminded of something vital in this world, where survival is shared breath and shared meat loyalty flows horizontally. You tattle too easily. You shake the roots of the tree, and no one wants to sit under a tree that might fall on them. From now on, if someone does wrong, you'll look for a quieter solution. A joke, a glance, a story told sideways, because you've learned something. Being seen is precious, and being invisible, especially to the ones who warm your nights and share your soup, isn't a punishment you'll risk again lightly. Section 11. The stones have no meaning, not at first. You're handed a basket rough fraying at the edges and told to carry stones from the creek to the far edge of camp. Not special stones, not heavy ones, not even ones you'll use to sharpen blades or build a hearth. Just stones. You try asking why. The elder simply says, the pile needs building. And when you look where he points, there's nothing there but a sad little mound of gravel half buried under slush and moss. You know what this is. Everyone knows. You're being humbled. Your offense, arrogance. Again, you bragged loudly and unnecessarily about how fast you ran the sled trail yesterday. Faster than the dogs, you said. Almost faster than fire. No one corrected you, not with words, but this is the correction. So, you carry the stones, one by one, back and forth. No one mocks you, no one helps. The tribe just watches without watching, glances that don't linger. Conversations that gently veer away when you approach. You start with enthusiasm. You stack with care. You pretend this is an important task. But after an hour, the weight begins to register not in your arms but in your chest. You feel it every time you bend, every time you drop another pebble on a pile no one will use. You're building nothing. That's the point. Punishment by pointlessness. And yet, you keep going. Odd fact. In some prehistoric societies, labor was ritualized. There's evidence from Paleolithic sites that stones and other objects were arranged with symbolic intent, sometimes seemingly without function. Historians argue, was it art worship? Or maybe this quiet discipline masquerading as duty. You finish your 50th trip, maybe 60th. The mound hasn't changed. You want to kick it over. Scream. Ask what this teaches, but you don't. You take a deep breath. You adjust your grip on the basket, and you walk back toward the creek. This time, though, someone joins you. A girl older than you by a season or two starts gathering stones beside you. She doesn't speak, doesn't smile, but her presence is loud with meaning. You've done your time. Back at the pile, she arranges her stones in a little spiral, then waits. You copy her, and just like that, the punishment transforms. Not undone, but reshaped. The next child to arrive adds their stones into your pattern. By dusk, the pile has become a mosaic, curves and lines, intentional quiet. Still useless, but now beautiful. Meaningless labor redeemed by shared attention. Historians still debate whether this kind of penance through work existed in formal tradition or emerged naturally in tight-knit groups with no jails, no fines, no written rules. But from where you're standing covered in dust fingers, raw, it doesn't matter. You feel lighter. You're allowed to sit by the fire again. No fanfare, no declaration, just space made for you, a bowl of broth past a stick handed for the evening game of ash drawings. No one mentions the stones, but they're there, still visible in the distance. A quiet monument to a loud mistake. Tomorrow, someone will add more. Not because they're punished, but because something about the spiral feels good to build. You'd boasted again. Of course you had. Just a few words thrown out over dinner like spare bones. I could guard this whole camp myself, you'd said. Mouthful of smoked fish, voice just a little too loud. If the wolves came, I'd scare them off with just a torch and a good snarl. Some children laughed. Others rolled their eyes. But one of the elders, he didn't react at all. That was worse. Hours later, while the fire dimmed and the camp settled into soft snores and rustling furs, he called your name. No anger, no sarcasm, just, come here. He handed you a torch stub and pointed toward the edge of camp. You'll stand night watch, he said, just for a little while. No fire, no stories, just you and your courage. Your stomach dropped. But I was joking, you offered half-heartedly. I wasn't, he replied, then turned away. And that was that. So now you're out here wrapped in too many furs, clutching a half-lit torch, sitting by a frost-coated log near the edge of the forest. No one else in sight. No drum beats, no conversation, just the creak of trees in the wind and the occasional snort from the sled dogs far behind you. You try to hum to yourself. That makes it worse. Every sound seems amplified, the rustling of your breath, the crunch of a distant step. Is that a fox or something larger? Your mind invents things in the dark. Odd fact. Even in modern indigenous communities, mock night watch duty is sometimes used to instill humility or responsibility in overconfident children. It's not meant to frighten, it's meant to focus. Historians still debate whether prehistoric people would risk assigning even symbolic watch duty to children. But here's the thing. You're not really alone. They're watching you. From behind hides, from the shadows of tents, you're being trusted not with the safety of the camp, but with the weight of your own words. The first hour is the hardest. You can't sit still. Your legs itch. Your ears strain. You swear the trees are whispering things they shouldn't know. The second hour. Something shifts. You quiet down. Your thoughts slow. You listen not for monsters, but for patterns. Wind. Ice. The sigh of snow falling off a branch. You even spot something small moving, a hair maybe. You don't reach for your spear, you just watch. You become part of the edge, and slowly the fear melts away. You're not powerful, you're not brave, but you are present. That, it turns out, is enough. Just before dawn, the elder returns. He stands beside you silent. Together you watch the horizon start to gray. Cold, he asks. You nod. Hear anything? You shrug. Snow falling. Rabbit. Maybe a fox. He grunts. Good. Then a pause. You're not a guard, he says. Yet. You nod again, this time without shame. But you stayed, he adds. You stayed. That matters. And just like that, it's over. Back at camp, no one makes a big deal of it. No applause. No mockery. Just a hot stone placed in your hands and a spot made for you near the fire. You sit. You don't speak. But your eyes scan the shadows just a little more carefully now. You don't boast that night. You listen. And as the fire crackles, you understand the lesson wasn't about fear. It was about awareness of your words, your weight, the people who surround you. You weren't punished. You were taught. And the forest was your teacher. It's the fox mask this time. You see it hanging from the beam before anyone says a word. The moment you walk into the tent, the older children are already glancing at it than at you. No one has to tell you what you've done. You remember. Too many interruptions. Too many loud jokes during the healing chant last night. A ceremony meant for a sick elder, and you were making faces at a toddler who giggled during the most solemn part. Even when you were hushed, you whispered something clever about antler eyebrows. That got another laugh, another glare. Now it's time to wear the mask. It's carved from pine painted in faded red with long ears stitched from sinew. The eyes are dark holes. The mouth is a silent grin. And once you put it on, the rule is simple. You don't speak. Not until someone removes it for you. No questions, no excuses. So you pull the strap over your head and sit where they tell you off to the side, just close enough to hear everything, but not close enough to participate. You're the fox now, and foxes in these stories are quiet. The mask isn't heavy, but it feels like a weight. You hear the murmurs, the clinking of tools, the quiet hum of a new chant rising in the background. You want to join. You want to explain, but all you can do is breathe slowly behind the wood and listen. Odd fact. In multiple indigenous traditions, animal masks were not only used for ritual, but also for symbolic teaching. Wearing the mask of a misbehaving spirit or trickster animal could serve as correction, a way to let a child sit with their actions inside a quiet metaphor. Historians still debate whether these masks were punitive or theatrical, sacred, or silly. But sitting here, you begin to realize it's all of the above, and none of it. The silence is hard. At first, you try to mime your thoughts. That earns you another glance from the elder, a long one. You stop, you sit. You begin to hear things you missed before. The pacing of feet near the door. The scrape of antler against bone. The wind's voice seeping through the seams of the tent. And the way your own breath echoes in the hollow of the mask. You sit like that through one full cycle of light, maybe an hour, maybe two. Time doesn't move the same behind the mask, but something inside you does. Eventually, a child approaches. They kneel beside you and tilt their head. They study your wooden face, then whisper softly, "Are you done being a fox?" You nod, careful not to speak. They remove the mask gently, as if it were a sleeping thing. And just like that, you're allowed to return. You don't jump back into the circle. You ease into it. You don't interrupt. You don't even try to entertain. You just listen. Really listen. Because you understand now, words can be beautiful, sharp, playful. But they are tools, not toys. And sometimes silence is the more powerful sound. That night you hanged the mask back where it was. You don't touch it again. But you glance at it, and you smile. Not the fox's smile. Your own. Because now you know what the fox teaches. Not mischief, but restraint. The stars are out. All of them. You lie on your back, fur wrapped tight around your shoulders, breath curling upward in tiny ghosts. Above you, the sky stretches wide and bottomless, the kind of cold beauty that makes your chest ache. The fire crackles a few paces away. The others have gathered close, but not for warmth tonight. Tonight is for forgiveness. You're the reason they're here. Earlier this moon, you snapped at your cousin during skinning. A cruel word, one you didn't really mean, but loud enough for others to hear. She'd gone quiet for hours, eyes down. You hadn't apologized, not really. You just tried to forget. But the tribe doesn't forget. Not right away. So tonight, an elder approaches you and places a stone bowl in your hands. "You'll sing," she says simply. You blink. "Sing what?" "Your family's song. The one you always mumble through." Your mouth goes dry. This is the punishment to sing. Not to be mocked or silenced or made invisible, but to be made vulnerable. In front of everyone. You've never sung it alone. Not fully. Not since you were very small. You stand, feet numb in the snow. Everyone waits. No torches flicker. No drums beat. Just eyes, firelight, and stars. You start soft. The first line comes out shaky. Your voice cracks. You forget the second line and hum through it. Someone near the fire murmurs the word. You catch it. You keep going. The third line comes easier. By the fourth, you stop trembling. By the end, your eyes sting not from shame but from the weight lifting off your ribs. When you finish, no one claps. They just nod. And then, your cousin stands. She walks to you, takes the bowl from your hands and pours water over the stone rim. Not a ritual exactly, but it feels like one. She leans in. I miss that song, she says. You nod. Odd fact. Among many oral cultures, singing wasn't just entertainment, it was memory ancestry. Apology and invitation all at once. Songs were living documents. To sing was to speak beyond words. Historians still debate whether Ice Age societies treated solo performance as punishment or offering. But tonight, you know it's both. You sit beside the fire again. The air feels warmer. The elder hands you a piece of dried fruit. It's sweet. You chew slowly, watching sparks drift upward. Someone hums the tune again quietly, respectfully. Then another joins in. Soon the circle fills with soft harmony. Not a chorus, just a patchwork of voices warming the dark. You're not forgiven with words. You're forgiven in sound. And sound in a world without written laws is the deepest truth there is. By the time the fire fades, you're leaning against your cousin's shoulder. Your voice still echoes in your ears, raw and real. You don't need to be told that you are part of the tribe again. You hear it. Section 15. It takes you years to understand. The scoldings that weren't scoldings. The mockings that never scarred. The silence that wrapped around you like snow when you crossed a line. At the time, each punishment felt sharp, personal, endless. Now they feel like something else. You sit near the fire again, but this time older. Your legs are longer. Your hands have lost the softness of childhood. When you laugh, it rumbles. When you walk, others follow. Tonight, a younger child spills hot broth in the middle of the circle. It splashes, sizzles, darkens the earth. No one yells, no one scolds. They all look toward you. You don't speak. You just raise your brow. The child flinches, expects shame. But instead, you hand her a scrap of hide and gesture to the mess. She wipes it up red-cheeked. The others return to their meal. Nothing more is said. That was her lesson. Just enough sting to be remembered. Not enough to weigh her down. Because now you know none of it was about pain. Not once. The snow on your bare toes, the mocking bird calls, the fox mask, the stone pile, all of it was a language, a secret dialect of care. The tribe never punished to break you. They punished to shape you, to tuck you back into the woven rhythm of the group, to teach you that survival was never about one person outsmarting the cold, but many people moving in unspoken harmony. Odd fact, in most surviving oral traditions, childhood correction is not an institution. It's a story, a look, a shared laugh. It lives in tone and texture, not laws. And it sticks. Historians still debate whether Ice Age societies were harsh or tender with their young, whether prehistoric parenting leaned toward fear or forgiveness. But you lived it. You remember it. And you know the answer is both and neither. You think of the child now sleeping curled up beside her sibling, warm again, full-bellied. She cried for only a moment after the broth spill. Then someone told her a joke about a mammoth with hiccups, and she giggled until her hiccups matched. And so the rhythm continues. Later, you step outside. The stars are back. The cold is sharp, familiar, but it doesn't scare you anymore. You remember the walk with the silent uncle. You remember the fish eyes. You remember the fox mask's breathless hush. And now, when you see a child running too fast toward a sleeping dog, you just raise a finger. The child skids to a halt, grins sheepishly, and redirects their chaos toward the sled. No punishment needed, because sometimes the gentlest consequence is just being seen. The wind brushes past your cheek like an old friend, and deep inside, under skin and memory, you know who you are. Not because someone told you, but because they didn't have to. And so you lie there, eyes half closed, the embers settling into that deep orange hush only winter knows. The fur beneath your head smells like smoke and old pine. The stories have ended, but their echoes trail behind them, soft and slow, like your breath on a still night. What began with a burned finger and a whispered name has turned into a lifetime of rhythm where discipline never came with fury and correction was carved in silence and soft ritual. The gentle punishments of your Ice Age childhood weren't punishments at all. Not really. They were invitations to return, to listen, to feel where you fit in the great unspoken circle of life and fire and snow. Each lesson was a thread. Some stung, some tickled, some made you laugh, and others made you sit in the dark with a torch stub and no one to talk to but your own noisy thoughts. But all of them were woven with care. And now, when someone speaks out of turn or boasts too loudly or breaks a thing, they didn't make you know what to do. You know when to tease, when to offer silence, when to let the cold do the talking. You were shaped by love that never raised its voice, by wisdom that knew better than to crush, by a world that forgave as long as you listened. Now let your thoughts drift. Let the night hold you. Let the snow blur the edges of memory until all that remains is the warmth of the fire and the soft hush of voices just beyond sleep.